Anton Guinea, he joins us regularly, talks workplace stuff. He's in Queensland, so that weather report is probably making him shiver. Anton, good morning and welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Robert Cameron. As always, it's a little bit overcast up here in Mackay today.
Mackay? Oh, you probably got 30 coming, have you?
Well, I reckon probably at least 20, I would have thought.
Oh,
I had to turn the aircon down to 22 because it was getting a little bit hot in this room.
Oh, dear me.
Anyway.
Good to have you, mate. And it's quite ironic because was going to chat about something completely different, but as I was driving in this morning, I did hear some news of some potential changes in the workplace with government making it easier to transfer from a casual work situation into a permanent work situation. Of course, employers are up in arms, but it's got to be a good thing, surely.
Look, it's interesting because it's a lot of the casual to permanency, in my experience, Robert, was at the discretion of the employee anyway. So I've still got to get my head around this because in the past, my understanding as an employer was that after 12 months or every 12 months, you have to ask your staff members if they want to become permanent if you've got a casual workforce. So I don't know what is new in this yet. I've still got to go and do a little bit more investigation. Yes, what we do know is that, and if you read some of the information that's come out, obviously the new government will ensure that eligible casual workers who want to become permanent can do so. And I think from an employer perspective, when you think about casual rates, so casual workers have about a 20% markup on their hourly rate, and therefore they don't get leave. And we all know what casual work is about as opposed to permanent. I haven't done the math on whether it's more costly for an employer to have a permanent or a casual, but I know with casuals, that 20% markup makes casual labour still more expensive than a permanent person on a daily basis. Anyway, now, for me it's really relevant, and when you and I spoke just before our call, you asked for some personal experience. We only have casuals in our organisation. That's why I really want to understand this legislation. And I've got a casual worker at the moment who's off on long service leave because casual workers get the same, well, similar, not quite as much, but get long service leave. Yep. Just like a permanent worker does.
And again, I suppose if this casual worker and many others, and I know some that do work casually and they're really happy about it, it gives them flexibility themselves and it gives the employer flexibility. But I've got this issue. We've talked a little bit about it before. We've had a discussion this morning about the Voice and the No campaign, and we've talked about LGBTQI issues. And it seems to me the antis are built around fear. And my concern about casual workforce is you create an environment where if you don't do well, if you are not productive, you won't get hours. So the worker's life is constantly built around fear.
Yeah, right. Okay, see, that's a different spin on it, right? That is poor leadership, isn't it? That's about leaders who motivate by fear, not by inspiration, or not by the real, true sense of what people want to be motivated by and how they want to be communicated with, because that's not a great way to communicate with someone or to inspire them or motivate them.
No, and I wanted to talk to you also about that, because what came up in the conversation from one of the business leaders was the fear of the productivity loss against this balance. But from my experience working in different environments, that if you've got a good workplace culture which your employer sets, people will be happy at work and they'll be naturally, instinctively more productive because they'll buy into the concept of the business.
Of course. Well said. And I don't, I just don't get leaders. So I'm doing a 2-day training program today, leadership training, and it's called The Modern Leader. And this group is amazing. It's in the heavy industry sector. They're just they're in construction. These leaders are 2023 leaders. They want to learn about what it means to be a modern leader. And a lot of them are from the 1900s, right, when leadership was direct, when leadership was motivated by fear. But we're not there anymore. And like you just said then, if we can create a workplace culture that engages humans, that sees the best in them, and yes, the performance managers as required, though in the right way. We're still going to have robust conversation as leaders, I get that. At the end of the day, though, it doesn't matter whether your humans and your teams are casual or whether they're permanent. If you treat them with the respect, with the dignity, with integrity and do the right thing by people, doesn't matter whether they're casual or permanent, you will get the best out of them. And that's called leadership. It doesn't matter really a lot of the time what their arrangements are. If you do the right thing by other humans, generally they will do the right thing by you. And if you can create that culture in your organisation that people want to stay, want to show up, and we just watched a video from Simon Sinek, what's your why? And here's the question I'll ask leaders that are listening to this broadcast, and hello to all your listeners today. Why do you get out of bed in the morning, and why should anyone care? Now, that's a really, really strong, powerful comment that Simon Sinek makes in his TED Talk, What's Your Why? How leaders can inspire action. And that's very specifically about leaders knowing what it is they do and why they do leadership, so that then they can communicate that to their teams and say, this is our vision, this is our mission, these are our values, and this is what we do at this organisation, this is how we do it, and this is why we do it. You know, when you can articulate that as a leader, you've got a better chance to connect with the people in your organisation, and they will want to stay.
Yeah, we still have this varying methods of leadership, and I'm pleased you and quite coincidentally, you're doing that today, because that's the part in this modern world. I keep seeing so many examples of good, progressive, sensible people. It's, you know, the Richard Branson thing. You look after your employees, and the customers will be looked after naturally. That seems a pretty sensible, and from my case, lived experience in life.
Oh, absolutely. And I love what Richard Branson says too, Robert. He has this great quote, probably his most famous quote is, train your teams so that they can leave and get better jobs. Treat them so they don't.
Yeah.
Them so they stay. Isn't that beautiful? And imagine if every leader on the planet adopted that philosophy, because you and I both know intrinsically that that works.
Yeah, so in other words, skill them up as quickly as you can, but make sure the environment's there that they can rise up through the organisation as their skills suit. And that seems to be the good places I've worked at. That's what happens.
For sure. Even if they're casual workers, right?
Correct.
And in the construction industry, which is what I'm working in at the moment, a lot of them are casual because some of the work, some of the projects aren't long-term. Some of them are short-term. And they know that, you know, and that's about leaders and organisations being honest to say, hey, some casuals. So I've got a casual in my organisation who's just ticked over 11 years, and she's an amazing human. She's our business manager. Now, some casual workers only sign up for contracts that are 6 months long, or 2 months long, or 3 months long, but it's about employer-employee honesty and having the real conversations about, you know, this job's only here for this long, or hey, because some casuals do want to become permanent, and that's okay too. And as a leader, why wouldn't you facilitate that if you've got the means as an organisation to have a casual worker on? I'm going to say that you've probably got the means for the permanent worker, and if that's what they want to do, if they want that job security, well, maybe that's something you can consider as an employer. Why wouldn't you, if it meant that your employee would be more happier and more productive?
Transport industry, we talked a little bit about that, transport and construction, where workers of recent times, according to a lot of data around mental health issues, at the highest rate of concern at any stage, and it's around being overworked or underworked, job security, all sorts of reasons. And because normally the construction worker and the truck driver, they're the tough guys of the Australian workforce, aren't they? But at the moment, they're just proving that everyone in bad conditions is vulnerable.
Beautifully put. And you know, I read a research report. I do a lot of reading of a lot of the data trends and the research work that PhD people in universities do. And one of the trends recently is just how much of an impact unemployment has on our mental state. And there's now a really clear link, finally, even though we probably knew this intrinsically, but there's a really clear link now between suicide rates and unemployment, right? And so, you know, the people that can't get into the workforce, as you and I both know, and as your listeners would know, really impacts our ability to stay mentally fit and mentally able. And I think the mission then therefore becomes not are we casual or permanent, it becomes how do we create more jobs, which the government's doing. And yes, we've got the lowest unemployment rate for a really, really long time now. And you know, if you talk to the construction industry at the moment, they'll tell you they can't actually find people, Robert.
Yeah, it's quite common. I deal with a few business leaders. I don't know anyone. Sorry, there's one I spoke to the other day. He's got staff, but he's struggling to find work because of circumstances. But everyone else I know is looking for more staff. It's a weird time. But I don't see that. We're not going to have enough time, but I just wanted another thing about the dole bludger syndrome that's being wound up again. I don't see too many people in my circle of life that are actually not wanting to be physically and emotionally involved in the workforce.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think when it's an employee market, what happens is labour rates get driven up. Conditions are better because we can't lose our staff and our employees because it's so hard to get new ones. And a lot of the training that I've done with leaders recently, Robert, has been around retention, which I think is just an amazing thing to do. It's like that Richard Branson comment that we talked about, that quote. How do you retain your staff? How do you keep them? Because it's so expensive to hire new staff, right? And I love that comment. I'm not seeing it either. I agree. I don't see people doing that whole dole bludger thing, right? But I'm in an industrial area. I'm in Gladstone, Queensland, and if you want to work right now, there's work out.
Yeah, that seems to be common. And I suppose Queensland is the place where traditionally the surfy, dreadlocked, dole bludger, hippie type would all gravitate to. And if you're not seeing a lot of it up there, well, I'm not sure that it actually exists.
That's right. Things are good.
Well, it's not exists as a crisis point. Hey, you go back to your conference. Thank you so much for your time. I'll be a bit more prepared with our content next time, but I love what you did on the fly. Well done, buddy.
Oh, anytime, mate. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
And g'day to your listeners again, as always.
Good on you, Anton. Thank you very much. Anton Guinea talking about workplace stuff.